How's it going, everyone? This video is another video looking at review data, audience reviews versus critics reviews, but we're not looking at movies or TV shows. Instead, we're looking at the Mortal Kombat video game series. So for those who aren't familiar, this is a video game series that started in the early 90s. It's probably the most popular fighting game that exists. Okay, you have players each control a warrior. The warriors fight each other. They have magical abilities as well. You could have a human fighting a human in terms of a human-controlled warrior against a human-controlled warrior, or you can have a computer-controlled warrior against a human. And what made this this game series really stand out, it turned into a cultural phenomena, spawning movies, TV shows, music soundtracks, was a few things. Okay, one that made it stand out in the early 90s, the main thing was the extreme level of violence, which was just not a normal thing in video games at that time. The violence was meant to be not just disgusting, but also comical in some ways, but in any case, it really stood out. And that's actually what motivated the creation of an age rating system for video games. Okay, that was created because of Mortal Kombat. Also, rather than just different kinds of warriors fighting each other, there was a story behind each of the characters in the game. It was very much story-based. Beating the game revealed elements of a character's story, and that's actually what made it easier to spawn TV shows and movies and such. And this was also part of the game, along with the violence, to push just boundaries of what's considered acceptable in society. So it really became this cultural phenomenon. So we're going to go through the Mortal Kombat game, see how audience and critics liked the different installments, and we're going to use that data to try and predict what the upcoming Mortal Kombat 12, the next game, Mortal Kombat game coming out, we'll try to predict what that will be like based on this data. So here's our table right here. Okay, we have from 0 to 10 on the vertical axis. This is audience score. 10 is good and 0 is bad. And on the horizontal axis, we have 0 to 100. This is critics rating. Okay, 0 is worse and towards 100 is good. And this data is taken from Metacritic. Okay, if you imagine a diagonal line going from 0, 0, bottom left to top right, okay, dots that are close to this line represent games for which audience and critics more or less agree, okay? Whereas dots that would be in this top triangle right here, in regards to that diagonal line, dots right here are representing games where the audience liked it more than the critics, and any points in this bottom triangle here represent games where the audience liked it less than the critics. So let's begin. The first 3 Mortal Kombat games that spawned this cultural phenomena in the early to mid 90s, they are actually not on the chart. Okay, the 3 gray dots you see here, Arcade Collection, Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3 Ultimate, these are not the original releases of the first 3 Mortal Kombat games. These are re-releases that were done alongside other games on systems later on for nostalgia purposes. So the reviews of these aren't really representative of how the original 3 would have been reviewed. I couldn't find sufficient review data for the original 3 releases. I imagine they'd be somewhere up here just based on the kind of cultural phenomena they were, but who knows? I still put these gray dots on the chart for a reason that I'll talk about towards the end of the video. So the first 3 games, they were two-dimensional, okay, which means that you can move towards your opponent and away from your opponent, so front and back, and you could also move up and down, okay, by jumping or ducking, but you couldn't move right or left, okay, so you couldn't move around your opponent in that sense. You could jump over them or they jump over you, but still two-dimensional, just up, down, and right and up, forward, back kind of motion, up, down, forward, back. What happened in the late 90s was computer technology got to the point where you could make games look relatively good, and those games would be three-dimensional, right? So you can move up, down, forward, back, and side to side. Okay, so you can move around your opponent as well. And NetherRealm Studios started releasing games like that. Those are the red dots you see on the chart. Okay, these are the 3D era Mortal Kombat games. Now, of course, that's a completely different game. Okay, a fighting game where you can move around your opponent as well as up, down, and towards and back. Very different strategy options than if you can just move forward and back, up, down, and that's it. And these games were ranked relatively well. Okay, so you see like 70s according to the critics. You see 8 and above according to the audience, except Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, which was 7 point something, right? So still not too bad. But people thought, you know what? Yeah, these are pretty fun, but it's still different from that two-dimensional style game, which is a different kind of game, and people still really liked that and enjoyed that. So what happened in 2011 was NetherRealm Studio released Mortal Kombat 9, which was actually a retelling of the story of the first 3 Mortal Kombat games. Okay, the ones that aren't on the chart, the ones that created this huge cultural phenomena, a retelling of the story of those games, but with modern graphics technology that existed in 2011 rather than early 90s technology. And it was a two-dimensional game, right? So they used modern graphics, but back to that two-dimensional playstyle. So you can only move towards and away from your opponent, and up and down, no around, no right or left, anything like that. And that game was a huge hit. Okay, so you can see that black dot, it's ranked higher than any other Mortal Kombat game that's on this chart, okay, by both audience and the critics. Okay, so it was a huge hit, and NetherRealm Studio decided, hey, let's keep making games like this. Okay, let's keep making these two-dimensional games, but with modern graphics. So then they came out with Injustice. Okay, that's this blue dot here. So Injustice is not a Mortal Kombat game, but it is a fighting game by the same company. It's the violence is more toned down, and the characters are DC comic characters. Okay, so you have characters like Batman, Superman, Joker, Wonder Woman, that whole universe. And Injustice was received pretty well. Okay, the audience gave it like almost 8, right? Between 7 and 8. Critics give it about 80. And then Mortal Kombat X, or Mortal Kombat 10, was released. Okay, so again, two-dimensional fighting game. Critics liked it about as much as Mortal Kombat 9. Audience liked it not as much. It's 7 point something rather than 8 point something, right? It's between 7 and 8 rather than Mortal Kombat 9, which was between 8 and 9. But still, audience enjoyed it. And then you have Injustice 2, which was, again, audience liked it more than Mortal Kombat X, not quite as much as Mortal Kombat 9. They also liked it more than Injustice, so let's see, it's almost at that 8 level. Okay, so audience did like it, and critics really liked it. Critics liked it more than any other game that came out, from NetherRealm Studio, any of these fighting games, right? So Injustice 2, Mortal Kombat 9, they really stand out here. Mortal Kombat 9 for being loved more than anything else by audience, and more than any other Mortal Kombat game by the critics. Injustice 2 by being liked pretty well by audience, quite well, but also liked more than anything else by the critics. And then Mortal Kombat 11 came out. So you see it's much lower than any other points. It's the lowest point in terms of audience rating. It's ranked lower than any other game on the chart. If you imagine that diagonal line that we talked about, if a point is close to that diagonal line, it means audience and critics agree. And look at Mortal Kombat 11. It's the only one that's not really close to that line. Okay, and the audience ranked it significantly lower than the critics. And even this ranking, which is a 5.7 according to audience, some would say even that's a bit higher than what it deserves, and here's why. Okay, these averages that you saw, okay, that determine where it goes on the chart, these are actually averages of different versions of a game, right? So for the same game, if we take Mortal Kombat 11, for example, you have different releases for PC, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, right? And you have that for other Mortal Kombat games as well. So all of those are averaged, but then you also have Mortal Kombat 11, Mortal Kombat Aftermath, which is an expansion, Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, okay, which is a version of the game that includes all downloadable content. So all of that is also averaged to create that final 5.7. Now, look at the original release of the game. It's a 3.6. Okay? The expansion and the Ultimate Edition, which includes downloadable content, those were 6.6, 6.8, which brings the average up to 5.7, but the original release was even lower, a lot lower, 3.6, which on our chart would be down here rather than up here, okay? But either way, you could see it's significantly lower, okay? So audience really liked it less, noticeably less than the other Mortal Kombat installments. Reasons why, I mean, some of the criticisms that existed for it were criticisms you typically see about video games in general, things to do with gameplay, things to do with storyline, with artwork. There was a certain unique controversy for Mortal Kombat 11 that had to do with costumes of female characters. So typically in Mortal Kombat games, the costumes of both male and female characters had revealing costume options. Okay, and what happened in Mortal Kombat 11 was you still had revealing costume options for male characters, but not as much for female characters, not as much as the previous Mortal Kombat games that existed. And people thought, okay, well, this double standard, it looks like kind of political censorship affecting the art of the game. Okay, so some people didn't like it because they felt, okay, well, they don't like politics in their game, and for a series like Mortal Kombat, the politics was always pushing social boundaries to push what's acceptable, to push and make things that were previously considered unacceptable to make it more acceptable, and that seemed to be contrary to that. Also, it's a game where there's a lot of acrobatics, there's a lot of martial arts, and a lot of the art went into showing just how the body moves in these different tricks, that sort of thing, right? So as acrobatics tricks, and for example, there's an impact, right? Someone gets punched somewhere, and how the different parts of the body react to that. Even artwork showing like internally how bones and organs react to impact. So that kind of artwork, people felt, well, that's an important part of the game. So it wasn't just a sex appeal kind of thing, revealing clothing. People had criticisms about that had to do with kind of what the feel of the game is supposed to be. So there was a lot of criticisms like that, that whole controversy. But in any case, the results are here. Now, the game actually sold a lot of copies, okay? And who's mostly buying copies? It's the audience, not the critics. So lots of copies sold, but also low critics reviews. It shows that, I mean, you could have a smaller group, low audience reviews. It could mean that you have a small group of audience that gave it really bad reviews that affected the average, or it could be that a lot of people bought the game expecting it to be good like the previous installments, but then they didn't like it and gave it bad reviews. Either way, what can be predicted about Mortal Kombat 12 based on this? Well, assuming that NetherRealm Studios looks at these reviews, they probably have more reliable review data than this anyways, but if this is some sort of prediction of what they look like, they might think, okay, so we need to correct for errors made in Mortal Kombat 11 and make it more like Mortal Kombat 9 and Injustice 2. Okay, so then what can you expect from Mortal Kombat 12? Something that's based on modern graphics technology, of course, but in terms of the other components of the game, story, artwork, gameplay, something more like Mortal Kombat 9 and Injustice 2. So, will that prediction come true or not? I guess we'll have to see. So, hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time.